What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you about NIO. I did do a pre-market video, but I want to go over some of the data points, what truly happened, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So NIO had a kick-ass day, up 6.36%, 394 the low, 424 the high, and you did have a fair amount of volume, so 54.7 million shares being traded, 58.6 is the average. So a lot of Chinese EVs did run up because of some potential easing coming from the States, and that's been obviously hinted for the last 24 hours, various different sectors. Today, Trump did state that various, Chinese automotive parts are going to be excluded. But at the end of the day, it kind of shows, like I said, a move towards the right direction between some negotiations, meaningful negotiations between China and the States. And NIO, surprisingly, did outperform the other Chinese EVs, such as Li, which did close in the red, 0.67, and then you had XPeng, did go up 1.61%, but very abnormal for NIO. So there was a couple different attributing factors. One is just the whole launch. So Firefly clearly is a big deal. L90 as well. A lot of news kind of circulating about that. I did bring up some of that in my pre-market video, but aside from that though, is just NIO's technicals. That was one big attributing factor why it did move higher, in addition to shorts. So in a lot of other cases, so Li and XPeng, they don't really have that high of a short interest. It's only roughly like 5 to 6%, but NIO shorts did return 3.51 million shares, and that wasn't that. I think at the peak they were returning roughly around 7 million. So it is definitely a very interesting circumstance that is playing out. NIO is gaining some pretty good traction over the last 5 days alone. It is up 17.57%. So I think just NIO shorts were really betting and hedging on the fact that China and the States, the whole tariff was not going to come to any resolution, and that things were going to escalate from there, and that Armageddon was basically going to happen. So I think it did catch them off guard. 13.83% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 219.94 million shares overall are being shorted. So definitely an interesting type of scenario playing out. Looking at the options though, 4.04 million in calls, 1.33 in puts. 50% of all the options being done were bearish in nature. So there was a good consensus of individuals out there not really believing that NIO is going to kind of stay at these levels. So let me know your thoughts on that. Once I go over the technicals, that might play a little bit of a part, but even over here there was 192,000 in premiums between 935 and 940, a lot of which were bearish, as you can kind of see right over here. So based on this, it looks like the majority was a $1.50 put that was purchased for January 15th, 2027. So very bearish for that. There was another smaller portion, only 36,000 in premiums, that was seen as bullish, and that was a $2 put that was sold. So overall, a common strategy, but that being said, it was kind of oriented towards bearish. So not the best, but nonetheless though, I think just NIO, a lot of NIO investors see them spike and do these abnormal kind of rallies, but very often, or more common than not, it usually does kind of miss and it just falls back down. So hopefully this time around it does hold these gains. So I'm going to go over the technicals, like I said, near the end of the video, but based on the bulls, you are seeing a consensus for it to be roughly around that 450 range, and that's going into as well next week. The bears are anticipating for it to be sub 4, so definitely a lot more upside is anticipated. Couple pockets right here, so you see for January 15th, 2027, consensus for it to be roughly around that $1.50 and $2 range. So that's the options that I did bring up. So kind of interesting for that. These are all the transactions on the secondary market. So only two, which were buys, 210,000 and then 208. These are all the transactions that did occur on the Darkpool though. Very, very popular. And this one obviously is where shorts and a lot of other large entities did their transactions. So 1.05 million. And that seems to be the only big transaction over 1 million, it looks like. But Let me know your viewpoint on that. With it closing at 418, trading between this pivot and this S1, so 356 is going to be the next strong support. I don't see that being touched, even worst case scenario, over the next couple trading days. So I think bigger and better things are on the verge of happening, but $4.29 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. Wasn't touched today, but most likely, given the pre-existing momentum, you could see that being touched tomorrow. But no new ratings, no real articles, like I said. So it was just simply shorts and the technicals that really helped NIO kind of exceed the other EVs out there. But on the actual chart itself, it is going to be most likely getting close to that 100-day moving average and also the 200, hopefully sooner rather than later. A couple of key things to watch for is 419, so that is that 50-day moving average, and then as well you did have the 100-day moving average at 430, and then the 200 at $4.61. So it is just a matter of time before bigger and better things do come, especially considering it did close 1 cent below, or a couple cents below, that 50-day moving average. And in NIO's case, that is a big deal, as you can kind of see right over here in August 2024, when it broke above that 50-day moving average. It went on a very nice run to about the mid sevens. Of course, at that time as well, there was a lot of other external factors that really helped drive it higher, but that 50-day moving average is a big deal for NIO and could potentially put it back into testing at least the recent highs of around that $5 range. So let me know, do you think that's possible? Do you think that a lot of this recent push higher is sustainable, or do you think it's going to be another one of these kind of a quick spike up and then it just pushes lower? What's your kind of thoughts on NIO? Give yourself a shout out if you have been buying, if you've been selling, and what you have been doing with NIO behind the scenes. One final thing though, if you're looking for some kick-ass buy signals, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.